Today I want to share with you how to make condensed milk. This is very easy and it only takes 2 ingredients and you'll never have to buy it in the can again. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferments, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Now to make condensed milk, the first thing that you're going to need is a heavy bottom saucepan. This is an enamel lined cast iron pan. You can use stainless steel. You can even use a nonstick saucepan, preferably one of the more modern day ones that are healthier than the ones that used to be made back in the day, but the nonstick pans are very easy to clean up. Now, for making this condensed milk, what we want to do is we want to make the same amount that would be equivalent to what you can buy in the can. Now, a can of condensed milk is 14 ounces, but that's not 14 fluid ounces because it's very thick, so it's somewhere between a fluid and a solid. So when you measure out a can of condensed milk, it's going to be a little more than a cup, a little more than 8 ounces. So when you're making condensed milk to be used in a recipe that calls for a can of condensed milk, you'll want to follow these measurements. And what you're going to want to start with is 2 1/4 cups of whole milk. Now you can use low fat and you can even try and use skim milk or fat-free milk. However, the final product is going to be slightly different than what you're going to find in the can. And if you want to use this in a recipe, as I said, that's calling for condensed milk, you're going to want to use whole milk. And now when it comes to this whole milk, you can use raw milk, you can use pasteurized milk, or you can use ultra-pasteurized milk. Now, for those of you who have been with me a while, you know I generally don't like using ultra-pasteurized milk, but in the case of making a condensed milk, we're going to be heating this for a long time. So using ultra-pasteurized milk in this recipe is fine. And if that's all you can find at your grocery store, you're all set. Now, in addition to the 2 1/4 cups of the whole milk, you're also going to want 2/3 and 1 tablespoon of sugar. And you're going to want to use white sugar. This is organic sugar, but it is white sugar. And when you're making condensed milk, white sugar works the best. Now, if you were just making a cup of condensed milk, you would just go with 2 cups of the whole milk and 2/3 cup of the sugar. But since we want to mimic more exactly what's in that can that you can buy at the store that says 14 ounces, which when measured out is a little more than a cup, that's why we're adding that extra tablespoon of sugar. And this is all you need to make condensed milk. It's basically an evaporated milk with sugar. So it's basically a sweetened evaporated milk, otherwise known as condensed milk, sweetened condensed milk. And that's the difference. Evaporated milk is just milk that's been allowed to evaporate by half. And condensed milk is milk that's been allowed to evaporate, but with sugar added in as it goes through the evaporation process. And both evaporated milk, which I've made in an earlier video, which I'll link to in the iCards if you'd like to learn how to make that, evaporated milk and sweetened condensed milk are often called for in different types of recipes. Pumpkin pie is one. A sweetened condensed milk specifically is often used in the homemade ice creams that you can make without an ice cream maker. And I have a recipe where I can show you how to do that, and I'll also link to that in the iCards. And you'll often find condensed milk called for in sometimes making certain specialty coffee drinks. So this is a wonderful thing to have on hand if you can't find condensed milk in your store, or you want to make something at the spur of the moment and you don't want to have to go out and try to find condensed milk at your store. It's so easy to make it homemade. So all we're going to do is take our 2 1/4 cups of whole milk and put this into our saucepan. And then we're just going to add in our 2/3 cup white sugar, along with that extra tablespoon of sugar that's in there. And then we're just going to move all the sugar, stir all the sugar around. And then we're going to just put this on some low heat. And we're not going to simmer it yet or bring it up to a simmer. We just want to warm this gently to help all of the sugar dissolve, because that's the trick. You want the sugar to dissolve completely in the milk before you start to simmer it. Because what can happen is if you don't let the sugar dissolve completely in the milk before bringing it up to a simmer, you can actually get little chunks of crystallized sugar, almost like as if you were making candy. So it's very important to let all of that sugar dissolve before we start letting this simmer, because we want the final product to be that beautiful, smooth, thick, sweetened condensed milk. Now I'm just letting that sugar dissolve in the milk slowly, and while that's happening, I want to share with you a little trick that I like to do when I make condensed milk. I like to measure exactly how high my milk and sugar mixture is in my saucepan. Now what I do is I take the handle of a clean wooden spoon and I just dip it down right into the milk sugar mixture. And I do this just as the sugar is dissolving in the milk, before we even get to the simmering part. And then I take it out, and I'll take close-up pictures so you can see exactly what I'm doing up close. Then I take it out and I can see that the spoon is wet up to a certain point. And then I take a ruler and I measure exactly how high that mark is. And it's about 3/4 of an inch. Now, if you have a food-safe ruler, you can certainly just put the ruler in, but this is a very old ruler I've had for a long time from my homeschooling days, and I have no idea whether it's food-safe or not. So I just do the test with the handle of the wooden spoon. So next, what we want to do is, you want to take 3/4 of an inch and basically cut it in half, mathematically. And you can even, this is such a small area, you can even just sort of eyeball it. And what you want to do is tie a piece of twine, kitchen twine, halfway up where that mark, where the original mark is. You want to just tie it halfway up. Now what I'm going to do is take a piece of kitchen twine, and this is food safe, and then I'm going to tie this around here, around the handle of the wooden spoon, and I'll take a close-up picture so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And what I want to do is just get it, you know, as I said, you can take the 3/4 inch and mathematically divide it and then measure it with the ruler as well. But you can also just kind of eyeball it. And it's such a small area that's kind of easy to eyeball. But the reason that I'm going to do this, okay, so I've got, as I said, I'll take a picture. But the reason that I do this, and I'll trim these pieces off, is that when it is close to time that I think that the condensed milk is ready, I'll measure it with the spoon, and if it comes up to where the string is, I'll know that it's reduced by half. Now we'll also check on the consistency of it, but sometimes just checking the consistency of condensed milk, it's hard to say, the consistency of condensed milk, can be difficult. And the reason is, it's not going to be super thick when you're heating it up. When you refrigerate it, it's going to become thicker. So you'll see some change in color, definitely. You'll see some thickness, but almost more syrupy than the real thick nature of condensed milk that you see when you buy a can of condensed milk. So that's why I like to use this little trick. This way I know I'll put this in. If it comes up to about where the string is, I know that it's basically been reduced by about half. Well, from moving my spatula along the bottom of the saucepan, I can tell that all of the sugar has dissolved into the milk. So now what I'm going to do is just turn it up a little bit higher, just to a medium low. Everybody's stove is a little different. And what you're looking for is a low simmer. And when we get to that point, I'll take a picture and I'll overlay it. But what you're really looking for is a little bit of foam and bubbles to be accumulating around the edge, but not a lot of activity. You definitely don't want to be boiling this. Not a lot of activity on the top. You know, a little bubble here and there, but not any you don't want active bubbles. So you want a low simmer. Well, I've got this up to a nice low simmer, and I'm going to overlay a picture so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. In making condensed milk, what you're looking for is to just have some nice foam occurring all along the edges of the milk and the sugar mixture. And then you're going to want to see some steam coming off the top. You may see a little bubbling that will occur, but nothing that would be considered a medium simmer where you're seeing a lot of ongoing bubbling, and definitely not a rolling boil. That you would definitely want to avoid. So once you are comfortable with your low simmer, what you want to do is not touch this again. This is very different than making evaporated milk, where you'll periodically come through and stir it. With condensed milk, we don't want to do that, because as this foam forms around the edges of the milk and sugar mixture, you may also get some sugar crystals that are going to form. And that's fine, but by stirring, there's too much chance that those sugar crystals will drop back into the condensed milk. So your end product it'll be very difficult to get a nice smooth end product. It can create something that is almost chunky, or like you've made some kind of milk candy. And so we want to avoid that. So we just want to let this simmer on low, very quietly, very little activity on top, little bubble here and there is fine. And we want to let this simmer for, this is probably going to take 40 to 45 minutes on low, undisturbed. And about at 40 minutes, I'm going to check this with my spoon very gently to see if it looks like it's decreased by about half. If so, great, we'll move on to the next step. If not, I'll give it about another 5 minutes. Well, this simmered for about 40 minutes, and I checked it with my little spoon measurer here, and I'll take a picture and overlay it. You can see that it's reduced by half. And now I'm also going to take another picture and overlay it to show you exactly what this looks like. It's taken on a lovely caramel color. Now there's a little bit of foam. So what you can do is just take a spoon and just start to scoop a little bit of that foam off. And then you can just transfer it to your plate. And if you have a lot of foam and you're going to be going in and out with your spoon, you can dip it in water too, because it's going to get pretty sticky, because sweetened condensed milk is quite thick. Now, even after you scoop out a little foam, you may also find that a little bit of a film can develop as well. Very similar if you've ever made evaporated milk. It's very similar to that. And so what I like to do so that my finished product is really nice and smooth is go ahead and strain this through a strainer into my measuring cup. And then you'll just want to work your condensed milk through at the very end, just to get every little last bit of goodness, but then leave the little bits behind in your strainer. Now, as I said earlier, a can of condensed milk will be, when you pour it out, it'll be a little more than a cup, 1 cup. It'll be closer to about 8.5 or 9 liquid ounces, although the can says 14 ounces, that's by weight, and it's a very thick type milk product, so it's not quite a liquid, but not quite a solid. So the can, what's inside, is 14 ounces in weight. But if you measured it out, as I said, it'd be a little more than 1 cup. And that's just what we've got here, a little more than 1 cup. So using these amounts of sugar and milk, you would be able to use this in a recipe to replace a can, one 14-ounce can of condensed milk. Now you'll want to store your homemade condensed milk in the refrigerator in a jar. But the nice thing about condensed milk is that this will last about 6 months in your refrigerator thanks to the sugar, which in essence acts as a bit of a preservative. So you can just go ahead and pour this right in. Look at this gloriousness. Now I'm just going to go ahead and put this lid on, pop this in the fridge. It'll cool down, it'll thicken up, and it'll be ready for whenever I'm in the need for condensed milk for a recipe. Well, if you'd like to learn more about traditional cooking, be sure to subscribe to my channel, and then click on this video over here where I show you how to make evaporated milk, another wonderful pantry staple. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.